Okay guys, today we're going to try to answer the age-old and complex and multifaceted question of does size matter? And to help us in our investigation, to find the answer to this question, we're going to use this humongous guy right here. Now, to look at him, I know, a piece of equipment this huge, this large, a lot of us are intimidated. I mean, we're issued equipment much less significant in size than this guy, somewhat smaller. And so we're often intimidated by size, or perhaps envious or jealous. But let's investigate, why that might be, and why that might be a false attitude. Well, this, as you can see, is a ace lock. Here's the package. It comes with a lifetime warranty, and it is their premium line, and is also their maximum security. So, insofar as Ace products, this is among the best that they have to offer, at least according to the package. If you want to know just a little bit more, we can flip it over and, blah, blah, blah. It's got a hardened shackle. And this is where it starts to get interesting. Double locking device for added security. So you look at the picture, it doesn't say it has balls. So this is a ball-less piece of equipment. As you can see, it's got pawls, these locking lever inside of there instead. So although he's a huge piece of equipment, maybe there's no reason for us to be jealous or intimidated. Brass tumbler, blah, blah, blah. And then we get down to another interesting part. Solid brass upper spool pins offer high pick resistance over standard pins. So again, maybe internally, this huge piece of equipment, there's some deficiency that, again, being jealous or envious of a huge piece of equipment sometimes might be the false attitude. It might not be the right attitude. So let's look at the lock itself. It is a solid, very, very heavy. As you can see, it's about almost 3 times as large as a Master Lock number 1. Just overwhelming in size and in weight. There are 8 rivets on top that hold this thing together. And you can see there's perhaps a weakness here. I hope we can maybe take advantage of that later. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that, but we'll try it. If we turn to the bottom, 60mm, and some guys measure their equipment to compare it to others, but in this case it's printed right there on the bottom. We know it's 60mm in diameter. And then, of course, there are some countries that try to use size to make up for deficiencies in other areas. And China, one of our favorite manufacturers, in fact, we know they do that. So let's see if there are some other weaknesses that we can exploit here. Let's try to see if we can get into this thing. I'm going to use bottom of the keyway. The way I do it is I just stick my pick all the way in and I'll rock it, and I'll try to get myself a false set, and that oftentimes is indicator of if the piece of equipment is not very high quality, or if there's some internal deficiency, even though it's huge. And you see we already rocked in a false set. And what I'm going to do is just move from pin to pin, looking for some feedback, see if I can get some feedback. And there I got pin 3, and go ahead and send him home. Try to send him home. Keep slipping off in there. There we go. Oh, wow, we're open. So I'll tell you, that was a premature opening to just a little bit of stimulation. And that's the kind of thing we look for, resistance from popping. Or we don't like these premature openings, to have a lock prematurely pop like that when it's just received a minimum amount of stimulation. That's a weakness in terms of security. Well, since that happened so fast, obviously in that regard, size was a little bit misleading. Well, we also see that he has the locking pawls here, or the notches. So since we have time, let's try to see about exploiting him there. Again, we're closed. And now here, in all seriousness, I'd like to give you a couple of tips on shimming. I think shimming is probably one of the most underutilized bypasses. And the reason is because people just don't have a lot of success. A lot of times because they might approach it the wrong way. Many people buy those cheap Chinese shims, and they're made from aluminum, and they're very, very thick, and you can't get them into gaps as small as these. Others have decided to make their own shims out of soda cans. Now, while that might save a few euros or a few dollars, again, that's not the right economical choice if you hope to break into a large number of locks. I would say, and again, this is pure speculation, more than half of the locks are susceptible to shimming. So if you get yourself some decent shims, you can oftentimes save a little bit of time. And I recommend getting some tempered steel ones. First of all, they don't bend or distort. Secondly, the material is much thinner. This is probably half as thick as a soda can or half as thick as those Chinese ones. Okay, that's the first tip if you want to get success. Here's the second tip. When you try to shim, look at the top and decide which is the wider gap. Oftentimes one is very narrow, as you see here, and I'm not really sure we're going to be able to get a shim in there. And then the other one is somewhat wider, and the tendency is to take the easy one first, but when you plug up that large gap, oftentimes it'll tension it, and now a gap that you weren't sure if you can get in, now positively there's no way you can get in it. So my advice is to shim the narrow gap first. And then the final tip, of course, is take a drop of oil. I use dry lube, the same stuff I use on my locks, and just apply a little bit to the inside and outside of the shim, and that sometimes will help you get in there. And I guess another tip, I wasn't sure I was going to talk about it, but never attack it from the front, because many of those pawls have notches cut into them, designed specifically to defeat shims. And if you go in from the front, you're going to end up messing up the tip of your shim. Well, the way to avoid that, of course, is don't attack from the front door, attack from the back door. So take the narrow gap, go to the back door along the side, and usually I go from the right side, and then just slide her in there. As you see, it just slides right in. And then once you get it started, you can rotate it. Let me dry my hands here. I got a little bit of lube on my hand. Rotate it around, and you'll overcome that shim. Come on, baby. And it'll slide right in there. Okay, now we got the narrow gap, and then if you look at the original gap, which was really large enough for a giraffe to walk into, now maybe not. Now a baby pig's going to have trouble getting in there, but we can probably still shim him. So we'll just do the same thing. We'll attack from the back door, slide in there, and rotate it around. And again, I've gotten some of the lube on my hand, sorry about that, and slide it around. So pop open, there we go. And this one is so tight, that one doesn't even want to come out, but it doesn't matter, we're obviously open. Why can we do that? Well, because although he's humongous, he has no balls. I mean, security balls. So if the lock is ballless, in other words, it has locking pawl instead of these security balls, we can shim him, which is another internal weakness. So again, there's no reason to be intimidated by size or jealous of somebody with larger equipment. You can easily overcome it by exploiting all of these weaknesses. So if you're stuck with smaller equipment, if you're issued something perhaps a little smaller sized equipment, don't be intimidated, because many times those smaller pieces of equipment, they're much more resistant. They don't pop at the first stimulation. They don't have all these internal defects. So size, absolutely, I think we've answered it now. Size doesn't matter, fellas. It's all what's inside and the resistance and the endurance. Anyway, thank you for your time. Everybody stay safe and stay legal.